My name is Heather Reed. I'm the project manager for the Deadmans Island Restoration Project. I currently own Ecological Consulting Services, which is an environmental consulting firm. A little bit about my background is I was born in California, raised in Tennessee, so I really didn't fit into either place for a while. But believe it or not, I got my first certificate as a draftsman. So here I was all excited that I was receiving an architecture degree, and I was moving back to California, and I thought, great, I'm going to be an architect. So I go up and I go into buildings, and you know what? You have to have experience to get a job. So that kind of blew that dream out the window. So to survive, I worked part-time in a laboratory, and it was a research laboratory for soil analysis, and that kind of started my career as a research assistant. So then I went back to school and achieved my associate's degree as a marine technician, and that's where I learned oceanography, surveying, marine welding, seamanship, boat engines, that kind of stuff. And that's kind of the foundation of who I am today. And this was in North Carolina. And at the time, I married military, so we traveled all over, and I had great opportunities to volunteer wherever I wanted to work, and that's exactly what I did. I volunteered sweeping floors, and next thing you know, I had my own projects, and people were absent. They didn't want to work. Can you do this? Can you do that? And that's how I got my jobs. Worked at Hawaii Institute of Marine Biology. I had my own consulting firm in Hawaii, and came here, worked for DEP, permitting, got my bachelor's in Hawaii as a marine biologist, and then I became a coral reef biologist in Hawaii. And I came here, and there wasn't any coral. So I thought, well, great, now I got to start over again. So then I went into seagrass and oyster restoration and research at the EPA laboratory. Went over to DEP permitting, went back to EPA, then came back over to DEP and worked for ecosystem restoration. Well, I ended up getting hurt, and to survive, I opened my own business, and I work for government agencies now. So one of my projects is the Deadmans Island Restoration Project. So I have to say that all that experience that I had in the past was boiled down to all these projects that I have now. So never underestimate if you have to reinvent yourself, because there's usually something else for you in the future. Yeah, let's see. The Deadmans Island Restoration Project is a project that an area has been eroding over a number of years. I don't know how to work
Go down to the bottom, that little icon.
Do you want to have the full screen?
I'm not a...
What you do is you can go like that.
Yeah.
Well, it needs to be on slideshow though, where it's
Uh-huh.
put on.
Yeah, just not showing.
There we go. Okay. Deadman's Island. Do you guys know where it is? Have you guys been there before in Gulf Breeze? Well, here's 3 Mile Bridge going into Gulf Breeze. Here is Deadman's Island. So you can actually see it from 3 Mile Bridge. It's a quarter of a mile away from 3 Mile Bridge. And this is where our project site is. Deadman's Island, it's not really an island, it's a peninsula. They called it Deadman's Island because it used to be a ship's quarantine station as well. And also when the large ships come in, anything large that you can tie your ship to was called a deadman. So where that came into play, the name, well, there's 2 different theories. But I'll show you later why I think it's called Deadman's Island. It has a beautiful, pristine salt marsh it protects. On any given day, you can go and just cut history. There's things that are just washing up. There's 5 shipwrecks over there that EWF has excavated. And these are barrels. And they're about maybe 1 every 100 feet on the area. And you can see when a storm comes in, it starts to just unearth it, and you'll start seeing the barrels become exposed. This is an old ship's careening area. This was an old remnants of shipwreck. This right here, do you guys know what this is? Right here's the little spout, and here's the handle, here's the bottom, there's the lid. It's a teapot. It was actually sort of intact when I saw it wash up on the beach until I picked it up, and then I was what happened to it, so I just took a picture. That was pretty much it for that. But you could be snorkeling out there, and you never know what's going to wash up. So it's somewhere that you can go and literally touch history every day. There's something that washes up. Nothing like gold or anything like that, but you'll see old door hinges, you know, from the ship's boats and such. I mean, you'll just see a lot of old stuff. It was used by the Spanish and British through the 18th century as a careening area where they just bring the large ships up, turn them over, clean the barnacles and such off of them. 19th century, it was used to quarantine ships during yellow fever epidemics. There's only 3 of these quarantine areas. In the area we have Grassy Point, which there's nothing there anymore. The old EPA, or the EPA lab out on Pensacola Beach, and Deadmans Island. It's where they would quarantine people, basically just drop them off, and that's where they would go to for their last days. And then in 1891, that's when the stations were built. Now, for this project, there are many interests. We have the city of Gulf Breeze, who owns Deadmans Island. They want to protect their property. The state wants to preserve the natural and historic resources. The federal government wants to use scientific data and use this area as a study site to help with other restoration projects all over the U.S. Because we want to determine whether or not projects like this have a transferability factor. And also, is this a good alternative for natural resources to stabilize your coastal shorelines? And then we have the homeowners and general public who grew up on it, who walk on Deadmans Island, you know, every day, or they just want to get involved to preserve this area so their children and you guys can enjoy the area for future generations. This is a shoreline change map, and this area right here is 1940. So you can see it actually goes parallel to the shoreline. And if you notice, so I can use this right here. Maybe I should sit down.
Sure, please.
If you notice this little area right here, you remember that brick structure that I showed you that was an old careening area in one of the photos? Well, that's where it is right now. Now this is where in 1940 it has eroded all the way almost 2 football field lengths. It's in front of the shoreline, almost a football field length now. So that's how much it's eroded from 1940 to now. Mrs. Moreland over here, she's one of the oldest living residents in the area. She has watched this erosion for the past 6 years. She's watched this area erode almost 1,000 feet through her whole lifetime. Down here, you'll see as soon as they put up this jetty, and we had even more erosion on the other side. So Deadmans Island is an area where you can take a look at and see whatever you do in one area, another area will be affected. And Deadmans Island is a perfect example of this. In 1977, this is when the city took ownership. So this is where the shoreline was when the city took ownership. So you can see how much of this mouse wants to escape. So you can see how much erosion this has happened over this many years.
And was that all vegetation, treating the shrub vegetation?
Well, it's just a little, it's a replicate of this. This is our Juncus salt marsh, which is not common around these areas. And this is a marine oak hammock, which has about 3 species of marine oaks, your live oak, your sand oaks. And you have the isthmus right here. So all this was up here, and I'll show you